Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I hope you find this enlightening and helpful, and hopefully this will give you something to go back to your enterprises and figure out ways to implement it in your pipelines. As many of us know, AR and XR is a complex medium when it comes to the general public. So before I start getting into our UX, UI, and onboarding for this, I want to give a little bit of background about myself and what our team does. So at USA Today, we have the emerging tech team. We are a team of 4, 2 developers, a project manager, and myself. What I do is I lead the translation of our editorial stories in AR. So I'm taking your classic paragraph-style writings and trying to figure out how to make user interactions. It's very key. I also create the UX, UI, and visuals for these interactions. And finally, I'm setting up constant testing to make sure that we are using the right tools. We've been doing AR for over 4 years now. We started in 2018, where we started with a one-off app called 321 Launch. This used 3D model simulations of the Falcon 9 SpaceX rocket, and we had live simulations in real time of it launching, separating, and landing on your tabletop, while a journalist from Florida Today at the Florida Space Coast was giving live contextual data and information to the public. We use that to go forward to our company, to USA Today, and propose that we shouldn't be doing things on one app and then just putting out new apps. We need to have this in one location, somewhere that's easy to access, and on our national brand. So we were able to use this to take Unity and build it into the USA Today app, so we have all of our stories in one location, in one spot, so users can quickly get in and check out great news content and be better informed. We've been doing that consistently. We've been working within the framework that we implemented back in 2018. We've edited on it based on user feedback and metrics, and we've gotten some pretty good recognition. And this brings us up to early to mid last year. We consistently noticed a problem in our metrics. 2 major phases of fall off was occurring between our users. The first initial fall off was on the, well, both of them are in the onboarding process, but the first one was within permissions, asking about the camera, getting them to allow us to use GPS, any other kind of motion controls, things like that. The second bit was about asset placement when we were streaming in the data. So we needed to have a placeholder asset placed in your world space and then loading in the stories, so we're not bloating your files. After that, users were staying in. They were staying in and staying strong. But this was our core issue. And anybody else out there that's not using proprietary hardware or software that does this for you, you may see this yourself and run into these issues. So for us, we have this one AR framework using Unity in the platform. Every AR experience is accessible through this piece. It streams in all of the art and audio for each story as it goes through and then clears out when they end it. This way we can reduce on file bloat. It also detects AR-capable devices, so this way nobody gets to dead ends if they're not on a non-AR-capable device. But this feeds into our single app infrastructure. This is our national brand. So anything that we're changing on there has to go through our mobile ops divisions to make sure this goes into this big, important infrastructure. This is where all of our things are stored, the main core components of Unity to get Unity to be read by an AR-capable device. And that is seeded out to over 200 local news apps. These are reached out to everywhere and gives us the power to be able to specifically reach out to communities. But what that also means is we're trying to find out why we're getting this fall off throughout over 201 apps with countless communities and several varying technologies and technology, knowledge, and ability. So this is a big challenge. And we have to get into that mobile schedule. We have to talk with our enterprise to get them to understand why it's important that we should go in and evaluate this, how we can bring growth. And I'm sure you all will run into this yourself. Well, we had a new opportunity that came forward. USA Today wanted to segment out and create a specific high-end sports brand with an app called Sports Plus, but it used the exact same infrastructure as our USA Today app. But they wanted to have a more different modern approach, different styles, different views. And so that meant we had to go in and crack open our initial framework for the Unity piece. So it was a great opportunity. We took this moment to say, now is the time. We have to update this anyway. Let us go in here and do a little bit more time. Give us some time on this dev schedule and give us a window and we'll get it in there. So we teamed up with our product UX team who deals with both this app, our local apps, and our national brand. And we learned about how they were evolving things, what their testing platforms were, and how we could jump in on the schedule. So the first thing we did, we had to get moving. So we ran a total UX inventory of what we were doing to try and find out what the core pain points may be and what is important and pertinent to get this to going. So we have to do onboarding every single time because AR can have different types of instruction needs. We can be able to use table space, floor space, room space, world space, and all those may need different ways for the user to be and get them into a different comfortable space to enjoy and interact with AR. Because of that, we want to make sure we're short and hands-off. We tried to automate everything because we wanted this to be really quick, get them in, get them moving, and get them into the stories and see the value. And we also tried to keep minimalist design. We thought, AR is everywhere right now. We've got it in a lot of things. Users are probably very comfortable with it. We don't want to belittle them. So short and brief. So we took that and we figured out we need to get these certain answers. We started with some core questions. These weren't going out to the people that we were testing, but these were things that we wanted to get answers for. So we needed to figure out how do we frame these to figure out getting the user's behavior. So we need to know exactly, do users really know what AR is? How tech savvy are they? Do their behaviors reflect their confidence? Many people who run user testing will notice when a user says, oh yeah, I completely get it. And then when you watch them do something, they don't. So it's important to get them to prove what they say. And were the users turned away by the stories, the framework, or a combination? We're telling news. I mean, we were doing pandemic coverage, politics, historical telling. So there were so many variables. We needed to find out what was the real issue that was turning them off in the first place to get to those follow-up points. And going back to the permissions, do they trust us to share device access? Were they concerned that a news agency was asking for so many things on their device? So with that, we sent out a self-guided user test. We got back live screen recordings, and we got back audio from them. And we found out what they were struggling with, and we gathered them together into some key points. We found out users had very limited knowledge of AR filters or AR outside of face filters. Most people were used to Instagram, Snap, future TikTok, that kind of style. They didn't understand the relationship of the camera to AR, which makes sense since they're just kind of holding the forward-facing camera. So they wouldn't scan the surfaces. They wouldn't look around. They would often either hold it straight down on the first place they were, or even just place it down directly. And so they would never see the AR. Users didn't understand that the AR subject was not an on-screen experience. We constantly heard users mention in my screen or on my screen. And because of that, they didn't understand that the 3D objects were anchored in their world space. They would constantly say, it's out of my space. They wouldn't move around. The subject matter would just be taking up only a small portion. I mean, you know how much visibility you have on a phone on portrait. But it wasn't all woes. I mean, we were doing well, but we were just slightly off center. What we did find out is those users that poked around, they really loved what AR did and were fascinated by it. They loved being able to get up close and interact. Once they realized that they could walk around these things or get up close as if it's an exhibit in their space, they were thrilled. And because of that, they found the value in news for AR, with AR. They were excited about it. It got them engaged. Some of them, when we told them, stop after you go through the onboarding, continued through and checked out several stories. So we got some bonus testing out of it, which was really fun. And they trusted us for app permissions. They trusted our news network. They trusted us, but they didn't understand the limits on how we were acting this. We needed to tell them when it was starting and when it was terminating, and that we're not collecting data. So with that, how are you able to evolve? You run through your testing, you've got some feedback, you've gathered data, you've brought this forward. What do you do to give it to your other teams and divisions? We started up a pain point plan. We looked at everything that was the key crucial errors. We have a tight deadline because we've got a new app development coming on the way. So we need to get that surface vocabulary better so they understand when we're talking, what we're talking about. We need to present that value, and we need to get a better understanding between AR and the camera. We took that and we made actionable tasks. We made a very concise list. Here's what we're going to do. We need to get this done. And lastly, we met up with our mobile dev and our final release. We timed this to the new app rollout, and we made sure we graded our tasks. So we made sure what was super important and what was a like to have. If we can get down to those stretch goals, just means we have a better product. So we got straight to work, heads down. So we started up with some sketches and mock-ups. First, everybody said, show me and tell me how to do it. They wanted to be very literal. So we tried a very, very literal 3D view approach, instructing things. But it couldn't evolve, it couldn't be modular, it couldn't change between brands. So then we decided to do a little bit more of a modern, simplified view that still had a literal terms. You can understand the space. You can see that in the top right there. We specifically set up like a little living room simulation to show when we want you to be on the table, when you want you to be on the floor, when it's in the room space. We changed those graphics. We also then have directly a 3D hand and phone in the camera space moving around to try and get the user to mimic those actions. And lastly, this isn't just the front end, but the back end. The sketches in the bottom is from our developers. We were looking at ways to be able to get the user to help understand what the user was looking at. We tried to supply a lot of surfaces for the user to decide between, but we ended up finding out is they just wanted it to work. They just wanted the object that they were looking at. So we tried to figure out when we're looking at depth and where things are, that it looks very clear that what surface the object is sitting on and what in depth it is. So with this, we made up a list of our core new functionality. We wanted to make sure that we were answering the questions before we delivered. So now we're presenting the value earlier. You can see on the left version 1, on the right version 2. We're showing what AR can do, how it works in your world space. Each step requires an action, far less automation. As you can see there, we have a little pagination on the bottom of version 2 that shows you how many steps are left to go, and each point requires action. It's no longer just instantaneous, so they were confused by that. And we have mimicking instructions. All of our animations and text has ways for people to pantomime. I'm very kinesthetic myself. I know there's a lot of people out there that like to learn by doing, and we found that through the testing and through doing this, it's really helped people. So we got this set up. We sent it out to our mobile ops, and we're panicking. Did we do it right? It absolutely worked. We saw the strongest engagement we've had in 4 years of creating AR. We saw a 3 times increase in average time spent, from version 1 being 34 seconds average per user to 210 seconds average per user. This was incredible. And we released at the end of the year last year an experience called 1961 about the Freedom Riders. This is a very intense, emotional story about the firebombing of the Freedom Riders. And people were spending large amount of times, 130 seconds average per user with a peak of 344 seconds. They were in it. We were impressed, and so we had something good. But we didn't want to stop there. We knew we had to push forward the framework. This is what you should too. When you find those wins, immediately look for those flaws and holes. So we're already updating with new experiences. We're experimenting with different formats, so this way we can push on the functionality and the framework that we built and find those gaps to fill. And we're going back in our library for some of our more popular experiences, and we're updating them with some of the newer things that we've learned from our user interactions to have longevity, because all of our experiences are news, and they should be evergreen. So you yourself, what should you take away from this? When you're going back to your offices, to your teams, working for yourself, what are the key takeaways that you might want to consider? Check in with your users often. Our user base is constantly changing. I mean, look at how the technology has changed from AWE last year to AWE this year. And we're people that are constantly looking into this. Imagine how the general public is acting. Your user knowledge is very diverse. They could be coming from different avenues, so they may have a different idea of what augmented reality is and behaves to them. Don't be afraid to hold the user's hand. Just because another organization or platform has done it doesn't mean that they know. Other people may be coming in from different directions, or you may have different behaviors that you want your users to do. And don't wait to solve for expansions later, because those things will pile up. It's always important for you to try and find those openings. It's like we were doing with the new rollout. We knew that was an opportunity, and so we sold them on the opportunity for a greater growth. So I hope these keys will be able to help you go forward and inspire you on how you can further update your onboarding, thinking about user interface, thinking about the user interactions. I really appreciate you all being here today. I appreciate you all taking the time. I hope you found this enlightening. I hope you found this what you were looking for. There's a QR code for my Twitter handle. I am around today. I will continue to be around. My DMs are open. Let's keep this a conversation. This is just the start. I look forward to your questions today, tomorrow, in the future. And for those that are going to be watching this session online or later, this is the start for you as well. We're going to continue evolving, and I'd love to be a conversation with you all about that. And I'm open to your questions. Thank you all so much. Does anybody here have any questions, challenges? I'm always open to talk.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I just follow you this morning on Twitter. My name is Ruby. I'm doing also XR journalism. I found out like examples show a lot of expectation of actions from users are using text to tell people what to do. But there are icons and other design components for traditional interface like a hamburger menu and other type that can indicate user behaviors or imply user behavior just through components. I wonder if you see some design components that for XR space that can imply message or intended directions through icons instead of putting text on the screen. Specifically, I'm thinking like ask people to drag something to place on a place. Also ask people that you can walk into it. This type of actions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. We're still learning and standardizing right now. I mean, really, when you look out and see people doing an XR icon, they're all over the place. We don't have a hamburger menu icon for AR yet, but there are ways that you can add practicality into it. There are several organizations that will add graphics built into the 3D space. So the nice thing about when you're developing on either phones or headwear, you can do on-screen, you can do built as part of the 3D space, or you can do floating in the space. So you could, in that example, you could place directional arrows or iconography that's used to scale and move. We've done that in the past, but right now, one of the struggles that we found is users still aren't looking around. So we try and keep the most important dialogue built onto the screen space, because no matter where they move, if they have barriers with hand motion, so if they have tremors or things, it's easier for them to be able to read. So we want to instruct them first, get people used to it and comfortable, and then build those iconographies and simplicities inside as you go through the experience. So when we're in the onboarding, we're trying to keep it as natural as possible. Yes?
So I have a question regarding that kind of like guided tour that you have, which improves the user experience. Now, do you implement any feature in which the system recognizes that you already went through that tour and then it doesn't show again? Or what happens when they go back and then try to see that experience again? It keeps showing it. I'm just curious about like if they get irritated that keeps appearing there when they already know what to do.
Just to make sure I'm clear, you're talking about the initial onboarding sequence that's showing every time? Yeah. It's something that we'd like to do. It's something that we have interest in, but also we are trying to make sure we're not bloating our apps with those things. And we're also trying not to capture a lot of data from the user. So the reason why we have the onboarding going in every single time is twofold. One, all of that stuff, all of that information is streamed in as the experience loads. So we're not remembering where you were because we don't want to track you in that way, if that makes sense. And wow, I lost it. The second part there is, dang, it's gone. The second part there about the instructions going through is we're still getting people to understand them based on the surfaces. That's right. So the interactions that are going through, we may have different spaces. So we have experiences that will cover up the whole room and immerse you completely. So we'll want you to stand in a different spot or set a targeted place. We've made games. So we did an entertainment piece that introduced you to Alyssa Naher, the women's soccer, U.S. Olympic soccer. She was the goalie. And she teaches you about those things, and then you try penalty kicks. We wanted to make sure that you were set in the right spot in the net to know where you need to stand and how to move your device to block. So if we just said, oh, we remember and we're going to skip you through that, we're not going to know where you are in relationship to that space necessarily, or the user may not remember where they were. So even if you're checking it out and you go, here, take my phone, give it a shot, it won't know where I'm standing when you hand it to me. So this way we don't have to have let me reset this. This way it comes in pretty naturally, and we keep the file size relatively low. We try and keep it under 10 megabytes, honestly. We go up to maybe about 20 on some of the deeper stories, but we try to make sure and test that we do this on and off Wi-Fi to make sure this streams in really, really fast. Anyone else? Well, if nobody else has any further questions, I really appreciate your time. I'll be here for the rest of the day. And of course, everyone lives online, so you can find me there at all times. I really hope to connect with you all further. Thank you so much.